神様はどこ？知らない。
So,
late to the party on this one.
Yeah, we are a bit behind on this, but we're going to talk about CYBERPUNK EDGERUNNERS by Studio Trigger. And we should probably start with a disclaimer. We're not really familiar with the lore. You've played a bit of the game.
Yeah,
I've
I played
none
about
of the game.
5 hours or so, a bit of the prologue, basically. So I got a feel for it, but I don't know what happens in the main game.
Yeah. So mostly we're coming at this from a narrative perspective in the context of Studio Trigger and the things they've done beforehand.
Yeah, and it's what we thought about the anime in general, really. It's got a lot of buzz, a lot of people talking about this.
Yeah, and it's not something I had high expectations for, because these adaptations of Western properties tend to not be very good. There was a few Marvel ones a few years ago that were just mediocre, yeah. But yeah, they really pulled out all the stops on this, and it was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it really reinvigorated the game, apparently. So I don't need to tell anyone that Cyberpunk 2077 had a bit of a botched launch. But this anime really turned people around. It seemed to really give them a taste of the Cyberpunk franchise, the IP in the world. There was a couple-week period where 1 million people were logging into the game. They made more money on the Steam through the sale in particular, but they made more money than they made in their launch period. So the anime has seemingly had a huge impact on the perception of Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah, it certainly shows that it's worth doing, doesn't it? Do a brief overview of the sort of plot.
So, the anime, we focus on David Martinez, who is the son of a paramedic who's working all the hours to put him through school and make sure he can get off the streets and have a safe, stable job as a corporate tie-up. However, Night City, being the dangerous place it is, where everyone's out for themselves, they get caught up in gang violence. His mother is tragically killed, and we're left with little options. Being expelled from his school, he has no choice but to kind of get into gang life, and we follow David as he kind of gets into the underworld of Night City and kind of the consequences from that. Of course, central to the plot, David's mother seems to be involved in some black market affairs. She had this special mod, I don't know how you pronounce this.
The Sandevistan?
The Sandevistan, which is a high-level military spec mod, which after the death of his mother, David decides with nothing left to do, he YOLOs and he installs that bad boy on him, and it gives him a fighting chance in a city where everyone's out for themselves.
Yeah, he joins a band of cyberpunks, doesn't he? And the story follows their happenings in the city, trying to make it in the big city, basically.
I think that's probably a good place to start. For the anime and the game as well, Night City is a real character in this. And
absolutely.
It's kind of rare for this to be done well, and I think it's something like a lot of media, whether anime, video games, or otherwise, really kind of lacks these days. So in terms of the video game space, I think of like locations as a character in themselves. I think the Spencer Mansion from Resident Evil, I think Shadow Moses from Metal Gear Solid, or even the jungles of Groznygrad in Metal Gear Solid 3. So many of these places where the setting and the locale is just as iconic and almost a character as much as any of the speaking protagonists. Night City has this in spades. It really oozes atmosphere. And I think the game has a lot of this. For the bit I did play, was very atmospheric. It really lent itself to that kind of role-playing element. It's a shame that the glitches keep pulling you out of it. But the anime really tapped into this. The background art is phenomenal. Really, they have scenes straight from the game in there, but they really take the best of what the game had to offer and really takes it to the next level, realises it in a real great way in the anime.
Yeah, and a lot of that is down to the kind of stellar team that worked on it at Studio Trigger. Like, you see that opening and there's all these names, like these big names that everyone's going to recognise coming up. Yeah. Obviously, it's Hiroyuki Imaishi is the director, who's a big name at Studio Trigger. You've got Yo-Yo Shinari was the main character designer. Kai Ikarashi appears at some point in the credits as well. I think he did some storyboards or something. Kira Yamaoka did the music, best known for Silent Hill soundtracks and things like that. And you also saw Yuto Kaneko, who was the guy in the, if you remember the Little Witch Academia documentary they did, the part of that project was trying to bring new hands and sort of train them up, wasn't it? And one of them was this Yuto Kaneko. And it's nice to see him now sort of 8 years later or whatever it is, and he's the assistant character designer working alongside Yoshinari and created a lot of the characters.
Yeah, Trigger's been big on that for a few years, so it's really good to see that kind of investment coming to fruition now. Animation as a career is pretty brutal. The wages are terrible considering the amount of work involved, and considering that most of the studios are centered in Tokyo, the cost of living is high. A lot of animators burn out in the first few years. So just like getting animators in is one thing, retaining them is another. And you've got to retain them to get them upskilled, to get them the experience. And Trigger have made a big investment over the years in training up new staff. And it's really good to see it pay off.
Yeah, and they definitely pioneered some interesting techniques in this show. There's the lighting is this crazy neon lighting constantly. And apparently they had very strict stipulations for how they were going to draw in this sort of rim lighting. It like couldn't follow the contours of the lines because it would make it look too busy or something like that. So, and they do all this really crazy lighting effects that you really have to be at the sort of apex of the skill to be able to understand how to make light look like that.
ライティングっていう考え方があんまり日本のアニメではなくて、大体同じ影の付け方をするんですよね。大体順光っていうともうまあ上からちょっと斜め上から来てるみたいな感じで、明確に光源を決めるっていうこと自体が結構ハードルが高いっていうか、その上2つ光源を作らなきゃいけないっていうので。
It's kind of funny because a big thing with the game is, Cyberpunk was one of the things to pioneer ray tracing. Well, not pioneer ray tracing, but ray tracing was a big part of the feature set. It was one of the first AAA games that was really pushing that. And here we have this anime paying real close attention to the lighting, but in a far more kind of considered and analog manner, it seems.
Yeah, I think it's something that's getting attacked and approached more often now, isn't it? Because we are at that level where obviously with 3D graphics it's harder to go much further, but lighting you can kind of push it a little bit more out, and it seems like even 2D animators have kind of followed that same tack, and they're able to elevate the look of the work by really focusing in on the lighting.
Yeah, I feel like there's diminishing returns on that which can be rendered, whether by the computer or by hand, so it is more about trying to suspend disbelief and sustain the illusion, so I guess lighting is direction to go on that. And I think neon lights are synonymous with cyberpunk, so getting the lighting right for this was going to be always a key part, and it's a key part of the Night City's identity. And the anime especially so.
Yeah, absolutely. So should we get into the plot a little bit? We're probably going to go into spoilers because we're assuming everyone's seen this at this point. It's been
everyone but us has seen
this.
It's
a while to get through it. So.
Everyone who wanted to see this anime has already seen this anime. We're the last ones, so buckle up.
Yeah, so right from the start, it's kind of foreshadowed in the opening that the main character David is on this self-destructive path, isn't he? Like you see in the opening, he's walking along and he's sort of on fire, isn't it? It's got this the music from Franz Ferdinand, and the lyrics are kind of related to that. And then right at the end, you get that shot of someone shoots him in the head and they're standing over him.
Yeah,
and you can tell it's David that's got shot, but you can't tell who the silhouette of the person is. But through that silhouette, you just see shots of Night City rapidly going by, as if to imply that it was the city that's killed him and destroyed him.
Yeah, it's another one of those cases of spoilers in the opening, which I love that shit, to be honest. I love going back to an opening and that's what that is. Some people hate it, but they're idiots.
But you kind of knew it was probably going to be that from the start because of how it's supposed to tie in with the game. You don't want people playing the game going, "Oh, where's David? Where's all these characters I love, it always has to
Yeah.
kind of be this like disposable thing.
It was kind of doomed to that. But I think in terms of like the city being, you know, the character of the city and kind of the events being foreshadowed, you know, it's pretty established early on and reinforced consistently. Night City is this ruthless place. It's entirely individualistic. Everyone is out for themselves. You will be betrayed by someone eventually. It is the kind of the culture of Night City is really important to the plot and the character motivations.
Yeah, the writer on this one was a Western guy, wasn't it? Like a Polish guy.
I think he was from the studio, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the guy who does a lot of the writing on the game and sort of the side novels and things like that. But in terms of the kind of point that the story was getting at, to me it seemed like it was talking about almost the way in which contemporary like transhumanism is achieved by all these like Silicon Valley types by taking these research chemicals, these stimulants, and obviously we had the thing with FTX quite recently where it came out that they were like taking all of these mad stimulants and being completely reckless with user funds, possibly as a
consequence.
cause of that. Yeah, absolutely. And you do wonder if that's maybe what he's trying to get at, is that when you go down this path of constantly trying to push your humanism beyond this natural limit, do you eventually start going down this path of self-destruction as an inevitability?
Yeah, and it's interesting because, again, not played the game, but I don't think this is something that's explored in the game. I think the game is very much cyber arms, cool! And why wouldn't it be? People complain about, you know, the stealth in Metal Gear Solid. You give them all these cool weapons and then you lecture them about murdering people, you know. And, you know, be a bit sane. You make the implants and the upgrades and the cyber technology, like, integral part of the game, and then, oh, you're dehumanizing yourself. It's like...
Yeah, it would be a bit grating if you're using game mechanics and then getting chided about the morality of using game mechanics.
So I'm not aware, I might be wrong, but I'm not aware that's a factor in the game. So it's interesting to see that explored in the anime, because it is a classic trope of the cyberpunk genre. So the story follows the path of David as he kind of works his way up this gang. He starts up at the lowest rung of this ladder. Through necessity, he's nowhere else to go. And he gets to know the kind of main personas of the gang, the main people, and as this plot goes on, he kind of works his way up. He kind of gets deeper into the underground of Night City. As this happens, his body undergoes transformation. He gets more modifications. He starts to change. You know, he gets to upgrades out of necessity, but he kind of can't stop. As the stakes increase, he kind of can't stop getting the upgrades, and once he's in over his head, he certainly can't get rid of them anymore. He kind of needs them just to survive.
Yeah, we have a short time skip, don't we? And most of the characters mostly stay the same, but David has this significant transformation where he becomes this like really chunky dude with these really like a massive amount of implants, doesn't he?
Most of his body's been kind of replaced by cybernetic implants at this point, like his legs and his arms, all the way to the very, you know, last couple episodes of the show where he gets integrated into that kind of arms tank. Because he wouldn't be a Trigger show without a giant mech. But, you know, all that's left of him by the end of the show is just a torso. You know, so it's visually striking, a little disturbing, you know, to see him slowly. At first, it's very cool and exciting, but the more of his kind of, you know, his body, his actual body and flesh he sheds, the more he starts to lose of himself.
Yeah, you start to get that sort of body horror aspect to it, don't you, in the end? So yeah, it's not played as being cool and the best way to do things.
A key part of the plot is that his Samvista implant, he can use it in ways most people can't. And so the, what's the corporation's name?
Arasaka.
The Arasaka Corporation basically want David as a guinea pig because he seems to have a tolerance for the technology. But it's not the kind of story where he completely loses his humanity. In fact, the story is about, the core to it is his relationship with Lucy. So Lucy is the kind of hacker of the group. She's kind of the result of Asaka experiments in trying to kind of like, from childhood develop these elite super hackers, and she manages to escape. She's lying low in Night City, and through the kind of underworld connections, her and David end up coming across each other's paths, the classic star-crossed lovers kind of thing, right? And, in this crazy world where you can't trust anyone, they form a bond. And that really is the central driving force of the plot. It's the heart of the show, that relationship between Lucy and David.
Yeah, there was a part of that that slightly bothered me. It seemed to fall on that trope. As much as I like the story, there is this, I think it's more of a Western trope of like the drama hinging on a miscommunication or a lack of communication.
Yeah.
And it did kind of seem like Lucy could have just said that she was looking into this stuff about David for his own good because they were trying to get him into this thing. And like, if she had just said that, it didn't seem like there was a really good reason to not say that.
Yeah.
So it was just a slight kind of bit that I thought was a little bit, could have been tightened up a bit.
I guess she was trying to protect David because she was being chased by the Asaka Corporation, and she didn't want David to be in the same situation. So but yo, do you need to know about this? They want you to do experiments on you. Like, why wouldn't you say that?
Yeah, I think then the audience is then just looking and going, like, well, just tell him why all this drama around just not saying the thing. And I think, yeah, you could probably do that slightly better, but
it's probably a Western fixation on that relationships fail because people fail to communicate, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's just it's an easy narrative tool, isn't it? Because you want to introduce drama between these two characters, but you don't want to have them have an actual disagreement because someone might then dislike Lucy or dislike David.
Well,
so they have to both be perfect, and then the only way for them to have drama is for them to have some kind of like miscommunication or lack of communication.
I used the term star-crossed lovers, but like the plot of Romeo and Juliet hinges on a huge miscommunication. So there's precedent for it. I agree, though. It is a bit irritating. It's kind of like, why don't you just say something? You could work together. It could be all Bonnie and Clyde with it. And, that would have been an interesting direction to take it. But I think with the plot of David and his kind of trying to desperately retain his humanity through cyberpsychosis, Lucy is the key to him retaining his link with his humanity, the thing he's worth fighting for. And in a city of kind of like, the war of all against all, where no one can be trusted, it's their bond and their trust in each other, which ultimately is what retains David's humanity and causes, he's the salvation of Lucy ultimately. So, it works for the plot that it's in.
Yeah,
but
it's
I
a
agree.
minor foible, really. Like, I thought the plot was quite impressive, really, and it did touch on these almost kind of very relevant to the day kind of themes of like transhumanism and taking that too far and losing your humanity. And it's obviously a problem that people seem to be having today. But yeah, there was that one little thing that I was just like, yeah, you just tighten that up a bit and it would be better. But yeah, it's
not just that. For me, some of the stuff early in the show, after his mum passed away, the fact that he couldn't afford the hospital care, that despite his mother being a paramedic, he's locked out of his apartment because he's not paying the rent. He can't even use the washing machine because he's not got the credits.
Yeah, you have this super futuristic world that they live in, don't you? But they're somehow worse off than we are today, and you can see that sort of mirroring the kind of path we seem to be going down. And
a common trope of cyberpunk is that of the megacorp, right? Mega corporations, and it's a bit chilling that we are living in the age of the megacorp.
Yeah, so we should talk a little bit about the characters as well. They're really well done, aren't they?
They have some great characters.
Yeah, Yoshinari and Kaneko did a good job. They're all very strong characters. They all stand out in their own ways. There was a story going around that the studio, I forget the name behind
CD
Cyberpunk.
Projekt Red.
CD Projekt Red didn't want Rebecca because they didn't want lolly characters, but
No!
the lolly must stay. So she's still in it. Yeah, but she was great. She was very energetic and interesting. Even the sort of the getaway driver Falco, who doesn't have much to say, he was still kind of cool, and you got a lot of his character just
the
from
fact
the small
that
interactions they had.
The fact that I can remember the characters at all speaks, because I'm usually really bad at remember. But like the core romance of Lucy and David is, you know, the pace of the show is fast. We'll talk about that more later, but that's believable. They're really endearing characters in their own right. The crew they have, so I can't remember the guy at first, the really big guy with then his kind of like love interest, the two main people running the group at the start. They're really cool characters. And you got like Kiwi, the hacker, as well, with Falco, the driver. And you got these interesting kind of dynamics and relationships. They all look really distinct. They all kind of have their own colour palettes, even their own silhouettes. Like classic, was it Yoshinari?
Yoshinari, yeah.
Yoshinari did the classic character designs. He's really talented at what he does, and he's really putting in the hours here, like really distinctive character designs. It's just such a visually appealing show, and even with like Rebecca adds a really interesting quality. I really liked. She was kind of that energetic, kind of go-getter character, but as this kind of like young innocent love, she has this crush on David. It's kind of quite cute and endearing, and you kind of like adds this extra kind of texture and dimension to the show, particularly as the things resolve towards the end. You get some payoffs on character resolutions.
Yeah, I wonder if people were maybe bothered by the ending, because people tend to like, especially in the West, those happy endings where everyone gets what they want. But I think it's probably appropriate for the point they were trying to make and the story they were trying to tell.
Yeah, everyone got massacred. Let's
get
get out of the way.
Yeah, apart from Falco and Lucy, everyone dies by the end, don't they?
So Lucy's greatest ambition was to go to the moon. And it's touching that throughout all of it, at least it wasn't for naught. Lucy does end up on the moon, and she's looking down on Night City from Earth above it all, and, you know, David's sacrifice wasn't for naught. You know, it was a touching ending, but when you like the characters that much, you definitely want better for them. But as we said, it's a prequel to a game. You can't kind of have the kind of side project try and outshine anything in the kind of core project. And I think it's just the nature of the game. I don't understand. I understand that the game isn't any less pessimistic. I think the tone of the game is pretty similar to the anime from what I've heard. So I guess this shouldn't really be a surprise.
Yeah, I think maybe CD Projekt Red should sort of take a good look at Edgerunners and the character design, because it did seem to be something that really resonated with people. I don't see people talking about the one-off characters in Cyberpunk the game so much.
Except for the bro in the prologue, but...
Yeah, the Keanu character, but I feel like people just like Keanu Reeves more than they necessarily like the character. So maybe there's something there. Maybe they can try and figure out what it was that was the magic in Edgerunners and bring more of that into the second game. Because I think the people playing the game kind of dropped off when they realised it was still quite buggy. And,
It's hard to lose myself in the game when I'm going to the mirror and I'm not wearing a t-shirt. It's like kind of ruining my outfit here.
Yeah. The look of the game and the vibe kind of put me off. But if it looked like Cyberpunk Edgerunners at all, then I'll be super into that game. But yeah, I think they need to try and figure out what went right with that and bring more of that into the game.
So I think an inevitable consequence of this anime is over the next, I'd say, 2 to 5 years, we're going to see a lot of video game anime tie-ins greenlit, I suspect.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't take much to convince investors if you just showed them the numbers of like how much it changed things, and suddenly everyone's going to want Studio Trigger or some big name to do them a little anime tie-in for their new AAA game, aren't
in
they?
terms of your investment, to basically have what amounted to a second launch for a game that was a failed IP, basically, at the time. 2 years into the game, it's still kind of buggy. But to have that level of hype generated, I think it speaks to the quality of the anime, first and foremost. And I think, like, Cyberpunk was always a bit of a diamond in the rough anyway, because, like, there is quality there. A lot of love and effort has gone into that game. It is very well realised, even if the coding's not exactly well realised, but the art design and the writing's kind of mostly there. And
it was very ambitious from the start, wasn't it? It's no wonder they struggled to get all the moving parts working.
But as a return on your investment, man, you couldn't ask for more. It totally changed a lot of people's opinion on the show, because I think it really, like, the strongest suit was the setting, and because it was based on a tabletop RPG, Cyberpunk 2020, which is turned to Cyberpunk 2077, and the setting, the background, and the environment really is the selling point, and the anime just really focused in and zoned in on that. And I think when people got a taste of the world of Cyberpunk 2077, they were like, I want more of this. That's why I bought the game. I got halfway through the show and I was like, I'll give this a go. So what more could you want? I think with how long it takes to make a game these days, I think it's going to take a while for that to feed through. But I am fully anticipating a Forbidden West. What is that? What it's called?
Horizon.
I'm fully anticipating a Horizon anime tie-in at some point, because Sony are obsessed with that franchise, and probably has nothing to do with the former head of Guerrilla Games being the head of intellectual property at Sony. But
well, we are next year getting a Nier Automata anime, aren't we? So maybe this process has already started. Not that Nier Automata needs any help getting more sales.
No.
Perfectly well on its own, but yeah, we might see more and more of that. Was a Devil May Cry anime back in the day that I heard was half decent?
Yeah, I looked into it. I think it's similar to the mangas they released. It was alright. Though funnily enough, some of the stuff, so Enzo in Bayonetta's Fixer, there was a character in the Devil May Cry manga. So it's weird, it's kind of a carryover from that. But it was okay from what I gathered. It wasn't what I was looking for in a Devil May Cry anime, but yeah.
Yeah, the costs related to doing an anime are really a drop in the bucket compared to AAA game dev. So yeah, you probably start to see more and more promotional anime, I would imagine.
A Mass Effect anime?
Maybe. I guess it'd be current franchises more than anything.
A Battlefield anime?
Revival. Yeah, probably not.
I'm trying to think of the worst games possible to have an anime adaptation.
Yeah.
A Call of Duty anime?
Maybe it would just get so big that everything will have an anime and you just get sick of it.
Yeah, well.
FIFA anime.
One can dream. Who would do it?
I don't know.
I'm trying to think of I think we could do a really good anime do good sports genres. Aim for the Ace was great, and it was about tennis.
Would you do like Captain Tsubasa style, where they're doing like insane tricks, like kicking the ball, then standing
like
on
actual
it,
footballers? We should license actual footballers, and it should be like an isekai where we get like the Dream 11, so you can have like the best footballers from across time, and it's like Dragon Ball Super, and it's like a tournament of all these crazy football teams, all the legends from all the football. So not that I care about football particularly, but I bet it would get bums and seats.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if it would fly with the average FIFA player necessarily, but I'd probably enjoy it.
As long as it has 6 Sakage, I'll be fine. I'll be able to live with it. I don't know who these people are, but I'll bet you I'll pretend to be a football fan after it's all said and done.
I was just going to say, maybe we should discuss the format a little bit, because the reason it took us this long to get through the show is because we're insistent on watching one episode a week, and Netflix is insistent on releasing everything in one big batch, isn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, for starters, the pace of the show is relentless. And I think to its benefit, like, I feel like Trigger kind of figured the format early on. They figured this is Netflix, it's going to be dropped in one go. They designed it to be binged. So there's this whole thing about the medium is the message. Maybe we don't need to go into all of the ins and outs of that right now, but the form of the show, dictates the content of the show. If you're making something for weekly television serial, you're more likely to go something that's like, You can drop in, you can drop out anywhere. You're more likely to have monster of the week kind of stuff. And indeed, of television, the 90s and 2000s, you get this. You move into the age of the DVD, and you get more box sets, and particularly with streaming and cable services, you get more of these long form kind of shows, which are the prevalent now. So I think Trigger, realising that this was going to be dropped in one batch, in one go, with the intent of it to be binge watched. The pace is quick. We never sit on one plot point for too long. Everything happens in an episode. But to its credit, it avoids the trope I hate of streaming shows where nothing happens for the first 40 minutes and everything happens in the last 10 minutes and leaves you on a horrible cliffhanger, so you have to move into the next episode, where nothing happens for like 40 minutes and then everything happens.
Yeah, they're just trying to get that hook in, aren't they? Yeah, I think the format probably plays to Trigger's strengths, because they have had issues before with these longer running shows having a bit of a dip and a slump in the middle, and I think that's to do with being commissioned for 26 episodes and only having ideas for maybe 18 or something like that.
Because this was only 10 episodes, which is interesting as well, because Tatami Time Machine Blues came out recently, which streamed online, and that was like 6 episodes, wasn't it? And it wasn't even the regular episode length. They were like 30-minute episodes and 17-minute episodes. So it really does seem that anime studios are taking advantage of the new formats with the less stringent, like, we got a broadcast date to meet, we need to get that white cassette to the, that white tape to the white box to the studio for broadcast. So they seem to be taking advantage of that. If that's better for animation studios and the animators, that's fine. I'm not so convinced it's good for the viewing. And as we said, we insisted on watching this week to week.
Yeah, I like the short form shows, and I think if you only have enough content for 10 episodes, then only do 10 episodes. I just wish they would release one a week. And I do find that if you then stretch out any show, even old shows that have already aired, and you stretch them out over the course of a few weeks or months, it somehow sticks so much better in your head, and you can kind of integrate more, and you have time to digest it, rather than just blasting everything in one go. And then maybe you get into it, but it's super late, so you're watching like the last few episodes at like 2 a.m. in the morning, and you're like barely registering what's happening.
Stewing on an episode is like more satisfying than you would think, particularly the really cliffhanger. You get to the situation where you're eagerly anticipating that next episode, you're thinking about it in the week, and you kind of get time to take it in, to stew on it. Whereas if you just binge it all in one go, like, it's very easy for all the episodes just to start merging into each other in the collective memory, and some of the kind of like lower lows just getting lost completely. But a good show and a good story is as much about its lows as its highs. It's key to its pacing. And I remember we rewatched Evangelion, and there was episodes in I completely forgot from when I binge watched it before. Good episodes, no less. So I really think there's something to be said for weekly viewing. And weekly viewing doesn't have to mean Monster of the Week either. I don't get this idea where people see it as regressive. But no, I enjoyed watching it week to week. But 10 episodes was a real nice soft spot. It hit well, didn't outstay its welcome. And the pace was like, it was relentless, but it didn't make your head spin. Something interesting was always happening, and the plot was always developing, so it was enjoyable in that respect.
Yeah, definitely. So we would recommend that people watch it week to week if they have the time to do that, and we are dedicated to this method of watching anime. We did the same thing for Legend of the Galactic Heroes over the course of 2 years. So
such an epic saga. There's no other way to watch it.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely something to consider. It changes the dynamic a lot, allows you to kind of take it in a bit more. So yeah, Cyberpunk and all, really fun watch. A lot to think about. Kind of, highs and lows in equal measure. And I don't mean lows in bad, I mean like in kind of like taking you to those emotional places, those negative emotions, as well as the hype positive emotions we expect from Trigger. Quite sophisticated from Trigger, but no less brutish in many ways. But if you're a fan of their previous content, you'll love Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I thought it was great as well. It was a clever story and great characters, and it looked great, really pushed the envelope. I didn't have necessarily high expectations, despite the fact that it was Trigger, because I figured they were just trying to make some money on a tie-in. But yeah, it blew away my expectations, and I had a really good time with it. So definitely recommend it.
So now we can get on Twitter and join in the hype.
Yeah, now we can read all the spoilers and things that people are posting and speculation and whatnot.
Don't expect any season reviews. 6 months later.